listener production.
Hey, it's Helen Smith here with you. Welcome to The Briefing. Have you ever been met by the Gen Z stare? It's the blank expressionless look young people are serving up instead of small talk. So why is it dividing the internet?
So there is a generational divide that social media in particular has made a lot more prominent. The way the algorithm works, it pushes things to us. Then we are becoming more exposed to what other generations are doing. And we don't get it. You're not supposed to. It's not designed to be for you.
So what's behind the Gen Z stare and why are experts around the world analysing it? That's coming up next in the second half of this episode. First though, let's get into the headlines with Tara Cassidy. It's Wednesday, the 30th of July.
Hey Helen, and to you listening, we're starting this morning with the Albanese government, who's been accused of lying by Israel over accusations that it's breaching international law by blocking aid from entering Gaza. And it comes as the death toll of Palestinians in the region surpasses 60,000 people who've been killed by Israeli forces since the war on Gaza erupted in October 2023, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health, with women and children making up around half of the dead. But Israel's foreign minister has rejected Anthony Albanese's claims, saying Israel is not breaching international law.
This is a lie, because we are not holding aid. Of course, we are acting in accordance to international law.
Now, that comes after a UN-backed body released a report saying famine is playing out in Gaza, while other humanitarian organisations have said they've witnessed widespread starvation and malnutrition. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced that the UK will recognise Palestine as an independent state next month, ahead of the United Nations General Assembly, unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza.
I've always said that we will recognise a Palestinian state as a contribution to a proper peace process at the moment of maximum impact for the two-state solution. With that solution now under threat, this is the moment to act.
The move follows France, who last week pledged to become the first G7 nation to recognise a Palestinian state.
Yeah, and meanwhile back home, while we're yet to see Australian politicians take such a strong stance, civilian action is ramping up and pro-Palestinian protesters were hoping to march across the Sydney Harbour Bridge this weekend. However, that's actually been blocked by the New South Wales Police Force, who've said their main reason is public safety. Now, a spokesperson for the Palestine Action Group says the bridge has been closed in the past for events like World Pride March, the Sydney Marathon and a Hollywood movie, and that it would send a powerful message over concerns about mass starvation in Gaza.
Yeah, and it says that if the police or the government wants to stop us from doing it, they have to take us to the Supreme Court, and if they do that, we'll fight that in court. So in response, police say they would take the matter to the court if organisers insisted on trying to go ahead with the march across the bridge, and that protesters who attempted to cross the bridge over the weekend risked prosecution.
A Liberal MP has made some divisive comments about gender quotas in Parliament that are being likened to that of former Liberal leader Tony Abbott. Longman MP Terry Young made the speech yesterday and says he disagrees with quotas, that they shouldn't be enforced in federal parliament and that men and women are just naturally drawn to different sectors and careers, Helen. Men, jobs that are physical, like construction, trades or those that involve maths, and women, positions that involve other women or are caring, like nursing, social work or other jobs like hairdressing.
Yeah, and those comments caused a stir, with Minister Catherine King likening them to those made by Tony Abbott, who previously labelled quotas as anti-men, politically correct rubbish. He's also the same leader, though, that described a female candidate's attributes as sex appeal, once said abortion was the easy way out, who hired just one woman to his first cabinet, Julie Bishop, and which led to this famous speech by former PM Julia Gillard.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man. I will not. Because if he wants to know what misogyny looks like in modern Australia, he doesn't need a motion in the House of Representatives. He needs a mirror. That's what he needs.
Go, Julia. And that speech has become recognised worldwide. Now, this debate, as we've just heard about men, women, quotas, it is not new. It's been around for decades, and it's been argued that even the Libs' recent lack of female representation was partly what just lost them the election, with new opposition leader Susan Lee, though, saying she is determined to get more women into Parliament but has stopped short of endorsing quotas.
Our party must pre-select more women in winnable seats. I am a zealot that it actually does happen.
Now, Terry Longman says he's speaking out on behalf of the forgotten Australians who think these types of crazy ideologies like gender quotas are damaging the country. And he did at least say the days of posters of half-naked women in lunchrooms need to be put away, before going on to argue that people should be hired on merit, not because of their sexuality, because they are Indigenous or female.
I think that it's fair to say that there are some instances and some jobs where a quota would be absolutely beneficial because, for example, politicians' jobs, they are meant to represent the people of Australia and therefore they should reflect society in Parliament.
Yeah, I do think we need gender quotas in Parliament, especially to include minorities, because we aren't at the point yet where everyone has the same playing field and opportunities.
The gunman involved in a fatal shooting in New York was reportedly meant to target the NFL headquarters but entered the wrong elevator before killing 4 people and himself. New York City Mayor Eric Adams says among those killed was also an off-duty police officer.
The suspect walked into the building 345 Park Avenue carrying in his right hand an automatic weapon, immediately discharged rounds, shot a police officer.
Now, according to police, Las Vegas resident Shane Tamura was the gunman, and he had a history of mental illness and had actually left a note suggesting that his motive was his chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE diagnosis, caused by playing football in high school.
He alluded to having CTE from playing in the NFL. He never played in the NFL. And he alluded to the CTE being the reason for his illness. It appears as though he was going after the employees at the NFL.
Now, CTE is that brain disease that's been linked to contact sports like football, rugby, AFL, run it straight, with repeated head knocks and concussions causing head trauma and leading to issues later in life, sometimes depression or suicidality. And also in the note, Tamura had said he wants his brain to be studied after his death. Now, President Trump has since come out labelling the shooting a senseless act of violence and Tamura a crazed lunatic, while the New York governor has called for a national ban on assault weapons like the automatic rifle used by the gunman, and to stand up to the American gun lobby before more innocent lives are taken.
As students and universities across the world grapple with the misuse of artificial intelligence tools, ChatGPT has announced they are launching a study mode to encourage responsible academic use of the chatbot. Now, the new feature can guide users through subjects in a step-by-step format, just like they would in an academic lesson by a teacher, designed to guide users toward an answer rather than just giving them one or dishing out an entire essay.
Yeah, and it comes as ChatGPT's developer, OpenAI, found that over a third of college-age young adults in the US use the chatbot, and around a quarter of them are using it to help with their schoolwork and academic subjects. Some of the top searches in social media on how to use the chatbot include videos like how to use AI to write your essay in 5 minutes, or how to skip the readings with ChatGPT. And there's been various studies on what ChatGPT is doing to our brains when we use it. One at MIT found that those who use the chatbot consistently produced work that scored lower in originality, and when looking at brain imaging, revealed a decline in cognitive engagement in ChatGPT users. So this is showing that the brain regions associated with attention, memory, and higher order reasoning were notably less active.
Use your brains, people.
Yeah, and the rise of ChatGPT ChatGPT isn't just by students. It's being used across professions, and we've covered it a lot here on The Briefing with the risk of AI in our jobs. But, we've got to use it with us and not let it do everything.
I'm not here to tell you to buy American Eagle jeans or that they make your butt look amazing.
Sydney Sweeney has very keen.
You see what I did there, right?
So apparently, Sydney Sweeney has great genes. That was the 27-year-old Euphoria and White Lotus actor in a new ad campaign from American Eagle. And it's getting a lot of backlash, Helen. Critics have been quick to allege that the ad's use of the phrase great genes as a coded promotion of eugenics, which actually refers to this theory that humans can be improved through selective reproducing, for example, selecting who you do or don't have kids with, to increase the chances of a kid's getting certain heritable characteristics thought to be desirable, for example, blonde hair and blue eyes.
Yeah, and this ad is creating division online, with some TikTok users calling out the ad for allegedly being Nazi propaganda and a racialized dog whistle. So it's arguing that it praised Sydney's genetic traits of having blonde hair and blue eyes. And now, you wouldn't think an ad for jeans could garner such a big reaction, but to paint you the picture a little bit, in one video posted by American Eagle on Instagram, Sydney is standing in front of a poster of herself with the text that reads, "Sydney Sweeney has great genes," and that's GENES. And then it gets crossed out and replaced with jeans, like spelt like the pants. And others have also criticised it for being overly sexual when it's actually an ad that's meant to raise money for domestic violence support service. Tara, what do you make of this ad and some of the criticism?
I don't know, if I'm honest, if I watched this ad before hearing some of the critique, I think that it might have gone over my head, but when I'm watching it back, knowing now what I do, that I can see how this could be misconstrued. And I obviously don't think that's what the brand was intending, but I think what's important is how it lands. And I think maybe if the focus wasn't on her blue eyes, for example, it might not have drawn at the same criticism. For example, one of the ads focuses more on her derriere as the part that she has great genes for, and it's a bit more tongue-in-cheek in that way. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think? We posted this on our Instagram yesterday, and we will pop it in our broadcast channel to get your thoughts. Are the critics right, or is this just another ad? Is this just another example of cancel culture? I don't know. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, and look, Sydney Sweeney has definitely been in the firing line lately. She recently also had soap that had her bathwater in it that was heavily criticised. But the ad is something else. If you haven't watched it, go and watch it, and yeah, let us know what you think. But that brings our headlines to a close. Coming up next is my deep dive looking into the Gen Z stare happening by young people across the world and looking into if it's a real thing or if this is just another generational quirk. The Gen Z stare is taking hold of your algorithm, but what is it trying to tell us?
Oh, Gen Z just does the Gen Z stare. They don't know how to talk to people. Fair. A lot of Gen Z don't know how to talk to people, but a lot of older generations talk too much, too rudely, and too proudly while being too stupid.
If the Gen Z stare is making you uncomfortable, it is because you are used to the millennial performative politeness.
It's being described as a blank stare with little emotion behind the eyes that screams, "Are you serious?" And the newly coined term even has its own Wikipedia page. But other generations also have their quirks. We've got the millennial pause that happens before millennials record a video, and baby boomers have the lead paint stare, allegedly from the amount of lead they've consumed over the years. So what's behind the Gen Z stare, and could it be detrimental when misunderstood? Susan Grantham is a professor of communications at Griffith University who specialises in the evolving landscape of social media, in particular how TikTok impacts broader society. Susan, how would you describe the Gen Z stare?
Look, it's a bit of a cultural phenomenon for the Gen Z generation. Physically, to describe it, I would say that it is where a young person is receiving information, not sure how to comprehend it, and giving a very simple, no thought, It looks like no thought is going on, even though you know a lot of thought is going on inside. It's a very interesting thing that seems to be happening with the younger generation.
So where did this Gen Z stare come from? Like, how did it enter our algorithms?
Well, I think the problem there is that we are in a period of time where generationally we get very confused with the other generations. So I think that's why it's making a bit of an uprising, particularly on TikTok, is because the millennials out there are seeing younger people do these things and act this particular way when they're in these service roles and just need to say something about it. So that seems to be what's making it suddenly become a popular topic of discussion on TikTok in particular. Just the older generations needing to have their go, which then, of course, results in the younger generation saying, well, let me explain, which is why we're starting to see this all-out war on TikTok between millennials and Gen Xers, and then, of course, the Gen Zers putting out their explanatory videos.
Gen Z make up around 30% of the workforce now, with roughly half of the casual retail workforce is what they make up as well. And some TikToks online are saying things like, and quote, that the Gen Z stare is rude. And then the response is, you just asked me what's in a mozzarella stick. Or you just asked me the most idiotic question, my brain had to reset. Is this older generations just not understanding Gen Z?
There's a little bit of that. And we've got to remember that as we get older, we forget how we acted. So I was mulling over this over the weekend and thought, what was my generation's thing? When I was in that sort of teenage years, my generation, we spoke weird. We said weird things. We used weird language. We had highs and lows and really weird ways of bringing our language together as teenagers. And on one hand, I get it. You know, you're going into a fast food restaurant or a retail outlet and you're wanting some assistance and you get met with a stare. But at the same time, we've got to remember what we were like. And most people would just laugh it off when you remember, oh gosh, how did I speak to people when I was working in hospitality? Or what did they think of me when I was doing that? So there is a generational divide that social media in particular has made a lot more prominent. So when we're looking at social media, TikTok in particular, the way the algorithm works, it pushes things to us, then we are becoming more exposed to what other generations are doing. And we don't get it. You're not supposed to. It's not designed to be for you. You're a target audience of something different. So there's that aspect that we've got to remember.
And Gen Z was the first generation to grow up with the internet pretty much, since birth. They don't know anything else. And they've been raised online and met probably more people virtually than they have in person. And there's more combos saying that Gen Z skip the initial small talk phase when you meet a person in real life or meet someone new, and therefore they find it a bit harder to kind of know how to respond to all those little small talk behaviours, hence the Gen Z stare. Would you say that's true?
Oh, absolutely. So obviously a large number of this generation are the students that I teach at university. And we're going through a period of time with a group of people that I would call the COVID kids. You know, the ones that were teenagers during the pandemic, the ones that were going through those very, very important developmental years, isolated in their own bedroom, doing work from home, not being able to engage with their youth in the playground at recess the way that others have been able to do that. And a lot of those soft skills are developed in that period of time. They're also a generation that because of the pandemic, they didn't take up part-time work at the same time that others might have. So the soft skills that we talk about there have not yet been developed at no fault of their own. So that's the other thing, is that, this isn't a generation that have decided not to do those things. This is a generation that have grown up in very important developmental years without the ability to develop those things.
So what is the difference between a normal stare and a Gen Z stare?
Okay, vacancy seems to be the big thing. So not having anything going on. There's a lot of videos that are showing, people mimicking it and, the wave in front. Is there anyone in there? That seems to be quite a prominent aspect of that Gen Z stare. Versus, say, us as millennials, we have our own version of things and we tend to show a lot of emotion. We don't have poker faces. We are totally showing our emotions and our confusion, and there's a lot of effects going on in our face, in our facial movement when we're doing something similar. Because don't get me wrong, we get confused by questions asked of us as well, except we find it a lot harder to hide that. So that's the big difference, is that the Gen Zers seem to have this exceptional ability to not show anything, which truthfully, I wish I could do that.
And how much of a role does TikTok have in shaping how Gen Z acts in social settings?
I would say very much so. We have to acknowledge that TikTok is a very powerful tool. And while we want our younger generation to be using it in a fun and frivolous way, we also need to acknowledge that there is a lot of influence that can occur on there. I'll point out one thing that I've also reflected on is the fact that my engagement with Gen Z in my own personal life has not been with that Gen Z stare. The younger group of people that I have been engaging with, I don't seem to get that from them. They seem to have a lot more of the soft skills required. However, we have to understand that there is that push with the algorithm, that if that group of people then go and engage with that content, they might be more likely to mimic that content. So there's always that concern. We hope that their mimicking of that content will be in a fun and funny way, a humorous way, as opposed to a serious way. But there is always that potential for influence, particularly on a platform like TikTok with such a strong focus on algorithm and the push of content.
So could the stare be an accidental form of self-sabotage as well by Gen Z for their careers or maybe even their personal relationships when it's misunderstood?
This is a tough one to answer because they will grow up. They will. Everybody gets older. And there comes a time, particularly around the age of 25, where a lot of those things click into place. While the older generation are looking at the way that they are acting and reacting and making a very generalized sweep about this group of people, this generation, they will mature. They will develop those soft skills. So I don't think that they're actually creating something that's very detrimental for their futures. It might be detrimental for their immediate future, but their long-term future, they'll get there. They'll grow out of it. We won't see 40-year-olds doing a Gen Z stare.
Yeah, it is kind of like that copycat behaviour that we see when people jump on the back of trends. But I want to ask, do you think that this Gen Z stare will stick around or it's just going to be a fleeting moment like we've seen previously?
Yeah, look, it's likely going to be a fleeting moment. As I said, that younger generation will start developing soft skills, and those soft skills will supersede the stare. And it's really no different to the other trends that we've seen. I mean, only 12 months ago, I was talking about the Gen Alpha TikTok slang, your skibbity toilet, all of that sort of stuff, which was fun and hilarious at the time, but you're really not seeing the younger generation using that language anymore. That's past already and it's moved on. It's now Italian brain rot characters seem to be the weird words that they're using now. So it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, tongue,
sahur. Yeah,
that one.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So seeing that younger generation engage with particular things, they grab onto it, they hold onto it for a little while, but nothing is staying forever. This is because TikTok is an algorithm-driven platform. So once the algorithm gets tired of it, once people start getting tired of it, the algorithm will then push them something new.
Susan, thanks so much for joining us on The Briefing.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
That was Susan Grantham from Griffith University. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Briefing. That's it for now. Before you go, though, we'd love it if you could share this ep with someone else you think might enjoy it as well. It's a really easy way you can support everything we do here at The Briefing. And you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. I'm Helen Smith. Catch you next time.
Listener.